the first on the land.
It is now time for Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. Joining us this morning is Branatic Neufville. He's agronomist out of Zone 1, and he joins us to talk about the roots to success, how soil moisture determines your harvest. Branatic, good morning and welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good morning, Miss Althea. I am doing well. Blessed to be in the land of the living. How are you doing?
I am great, but boy, Branatic, it's hot and dry though.
Oh, yes, definitely it is.
My goodness. What are we to do about this lack of moisture? What can one do?
All right, Miss Althea. For this lack of moisture, there are many approaches that farmers can take regarding this lack of moisture. But first, we have to understand what we mean when we're talking about soil moisture. Right? So when we talk about soil moisture, Mr. Althea, we are talking about the water that is held in the soil. You know, the water that the plant roots can absorb, or to make it more comprehensible, it is the water that the plant roots drink to stay alive. Right? Please note that this water we are talking about is not the water that is on top of the soil, but rather the water that is inside the soil between the soil particles. Right? Now, this water, now, it is important because without it, the seeds, they can't germinate, they can't establish, and the plants, they begin to dehydrate, leading to yellowing, that stunted growth, and eventually decline, right? So, think of the soil moisture like the food for your crops, right? Just like how people need water to stay healthy, the crops in the same breath need moisture in the soil to grow and to give a good harvest.
And of course, this therefore means that farmers, big and small, medium size, whatever the size of your operations, we have to be aware of these issues. Now, when we talk about soil moisture, why is it critical for crops, Branatic?
Excellent question. Now, Ms. Althea, just as we stated before, without this soil moisture or this soil water, because really soil moisture is the water, as I mentioned, is held in the soil. Now, as I mentioned before, without it, there is no harvest because the seeds, they can't germinate. As a result, you won't have any plant, right? Now, and therefore, managing this moisture is one of the most important parts of farming. In fact, this is even more important than fertilizer and pesticides because without the water, nothing else works. Now, to take it up a little notch, let me briefly talk about the three types of soil water because not all water in the soil is actually useful for the crops, right? Now, with that being said, there are three main types of soil water. First, there's the gravitational water, and this is the water that drains quickly through the soil right after heavy rainfall or irrigation. It moves straight down due to gravity and often bypasses the root zone. As a result, it seeps away before the plant can use it. In clay soil, this kind of water, it leads to waterlogging. Secondly, and most importantly, is the capillary water. And this water is held in the tiny spaces between the soil particles after excess water is drained away. Right? It moves very slowly and it stays within the root zone long enough for the plant to absorb it. Now, this is the sweet spot. This is the water that the crop actually used to grow. And finally, there is a hygroscopic water, and this water clings tightly to the surface of the soil particles, almost like glue. Right? It is held so tightly that the plant roots, they can't absorb it and it only disappears. Taken together, only capillary water is truly beneficial for crop growth, right? Now, the goal in farming isn't just to have that wet soil, but to maintain the right kind of water, right, which is the capillary water within the root zone. Not too much, not too little, but the strike, that balance that leads to strong, healthy yield.
All right, and so all of this is very important. Now, I want to find out, and I'm certain that others listening as well want to understand how the moisture need changes throughout the growth cycle. Is it the same all throughout the entire growth cycle, or do you need more water, different types of watering systems at different stages?
No, excellent, Mr. Excellent. Now, as the crop grows, right, their water needs changes. They don't need the same amount of moisture all the time. So it's just like a baby or a child versus an adult. They all eat different amount of food. In the same way, the crop, they demand different levels of moisture depending on where they are in their life cycle. Now, to make it simple, by breaking down each stages, during the germination stage, right, the soil must be moist so that the seed can absorb the water to activate enzyme and begin the growth process, right? Now, if the soil is dry, the germination may be delayed or it may not happen at all. For the vegetative stage, the young plant is rapidly developing its roots, its stems and leaves. Therefore, steady moisture is critical to support a healthy structural growth. Now, when it comes to the flowering stage, this is one of the most sensitive and water-dependent stage. If the plant lacks adequate moisture, it may produce fewer flowers, and fewer flowers often means fewer fruits, therefore fewer harvest. Right? Now, for the fruit or the grain formation stage, for crops like your corns, your beans, your tomatoes, they need generous, well-managed moisture during this phase to support the filling of the grains or the sizing and the quality of the fruit. Right? Now, water stress at this stage can directly reduce the yields and the market value. And for the maturity stage, right, this is when the crop is almost ready for harvest. As the crop approaches harvest, its water requirements decline. In fact, excessive moisture at this stage, Ms. Althea, can do more harm than good in some crops. Now, it is important right now to know that the most critical stage for the water in a crop's life cycle are during the flowering and the fruit or grain formation, right? If the plant at this stage doesn't receive enough moisture during at these points, even the best seeds and the best fertilizers cannot compensate for the loss, right? I say that to say this: without adequate water, the flower may fail to develop and fruits or grains may not fill, right, leading to a significant reduction in the yield.
Well, that begs the question, though, Branatic, of how farmers can monitor soil moisture effectively. I would imagine that particularly out in the open field, this is important.
Most definitely. But first, let us understand what we mean by monitoring soil moisture and its criticality, right? Now, soil moisture, it means assessing how wet or how dry the soil is, right? It helps the farmer now to make informed decision about when to irrigate and how much water to apply. Right now, it prevents two common issues: underwatering, which leads to plant stress and stunted growth, and also overwatering, which not only wastes water, but it also leaches valuable nutrients away from the root zone. In both cases, Mr. Althea, yield potential is compromised. So monitoring is key, right? Striking the right balance. Now, some easy and some effective ways that farmers can employ to effectively monitor their soil moisture is a method known as the hand feed method. The hand feed method, or what we call the touch and feel test. And how it works is that a small hole is dug and the farmers take a handful of the soil from the root zone about 15 to 20 centimeters deep and squeeze it, right? Now, if it sticks together and feels damp, the moisture is okay. However, if it crumbles and feels dry, it needs water. And if it feels sticky and muddy, then that means that the soil is wet. Now, this method here, it is free and it is good for most small farms, right? Another simple and effective means of monitoring the soil moisture effectively is the use of simple tools like the tensiometers or the moisture meters, right? And these tools, they measure how much water is available in the soil, right? They help the farmer to understand whether the soil is too dry or too wet or just right for healthy crop growth. And how they work is that you place them in the soil at the root depth, right? They show a reading wet, dry, or medium, and depending on how much moisture is, and this reading is dependent on how much moisture is available, right? This is an affordable and this is way more accurate than guessing.
Okay. Branatic, how does, we know that there are different types of soil. How does that affect moisture retention?
Excellent question. Now, different soils, Mr. Althea, they affect how moisture is stored and used by the plant. For example, your clay soils, right? They hold water well because of their fine particles. However, they drain slowly, and in most cases, the soils become waterlogged if they are not managed properly. Mm-hmm. Take, for example, your sandy soil and the contrary, right? They have large particles that drain very quickly, which means that they dry out faster and they need more frequent watering. Soils, though, like the loam, it strikes the best balance. So they hold enough moisture for plant use while allowing excess water to drain. From this, we can conclude that knowing the soil type, it helps the farmers know to understand how much water it can hold and how often they need to irrigate. Right? Therefore, Mr. Althea, managing the soil moisture effectively, it starts with the soil itself, because the same amount of rain or irrigation behaves very differently depending on the kind of soil it's applied to.
All right, so that is important for the farmers to understand that the soil type that they're working with, so that they can make more informed decisions about how it is that they're going to deal with moisture retention and the types of crops that they're growing. Branatic, we're on the break, so I'm going to clear that. Then when we come back, I want to take a look at some of the common mistakes that farmers make regarding irrigation. I also want to take a look at some of the best practices for managing soil moisture.
Farmers, you can now prevent and cure fungal diseases with Eradicate Systemic Fungicide from Newport-Fersan, Jamaica Limited. Eradicate is effective against rust in coffee, citrus, sugarcane and peanut, black and yellow cicotoca, early blight, mildews, purple blotch in onions, and other fungal diseases. Get your Eradicate at your nearest farm store or at the Newport-Fersan office, 2A2B Worry Wharf Complex. Stay in control with Eradicate.
All right, so we are inside the feature, First and in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. With us this morning, Branatic Neufville, agronomist out of Zone 1, and he is discussing with us the roots to success, how soil moisture determines your harvest. And I did indicate ahead of the break that when we come back, I want to take a look at some of the common mistakes that farmers make when it comes to irrigation. Branatic, what are some of these? I know we can't discuss everything, but if you could come up, perhaps share just a couple of them with us.
All right, Mr. Althea, I'm going to share two of the most common ones. These are the most prevalent ones that farmers make regarding irrigation. And first, I want to start by irrigating by the crop. What does this mean? This means that the farmers know the watering is fixed to a schedule. Like, for example, every Monday or every 3 days, and this is done regardless of the actual soil conditions. Now, the problem now is that whether crop stage and soil type, they all affect how much water is needed. Mm-hmm. This approach now often leads to overwatering and in some cases underwatering, because what it does is that it ignores the real moisture status of the root zone. The second most common mistake, Mr. Althea, and the final one that we'll be mentioning, is farmers irrigate only when the crops show sign of wilting. Now, waiting until the plants wilt before watering means that the crop is already under stress. Mm-hmm. By the time wilting, Mr. Althea, becomes visible, growth have already slowed, flowers may have aborted, or fruit quality may have declined. So it's always better to monitor the soil moisture and water before visible stress occurs.
Okay. No, so we know that we usually water on a schedule, but when it comes to the hotter and drier conditions, we might have to make adjustments. I figure that is what we're saying here, because you can't wait until the plants start to dry up before you decide to do something about it.
Which is right.
Right. All right. So, what are some of the best practices for managing soil moisture? Having gone through now the whole issue with the growth cycle, the different types of soil that exist out there, and the common mistakes that farmers make, can you just put some solutions on the table now?
Most definitely. No. So one of the best practices that farmers can employ for managing the soil moisture is schedule the irrigation based on the crop stage and the test levels, and not just by habit. And we mentioned earlier about that different crop stage requires different amount of water, right? So use the soil moisture readings, as we mentioned, like your tensiometers, right? And you want the farmers now to use the soil moisture reading and the crop needs, not a routine, to decide how much water to irrigate. Also, the use of mulch to reduce evaporation, right? Now, applying mulch, it helps to cover the soil surface, keeping moisture in by blocking that direct sunlight and reducing water loss to evaporation. Now, another method that they could employ is the rotation of shallow and deep-rooted crops, right? Rotating crop with varying root depth, it helps the moisture from different soil layers even more efficiently, and thus reducing the pressure on the same zone season after season. And another method that farmers could implement is drip irrigation where applicable for water use efficiency, right? Now, as we know, drip system, they delivers water directly to the root zone, minimizing waste and evaporation, right? Therefore, it improves efficiency and promotes consistent soil moisture levels. And finally, farmers could incorporate inorganic matter to increase water holding capacity, right? Now, adding the compost inside there, the manure, it improves the soil ability to retain capillary water. And as we mentioned earlier, this is water that is most beneficial to the crop, right? It therefore keeps the moisture available to the plant for longer periods of time.
With the drip irrigation systems, importantly, Branatic, I believe you can build out the system. You can start small and then you keep adding. Of course, as you expand your operations, you're then having to take a look as well at the source of the water that is being provided. I know that one of the things that you all say is that, listen, you can't use the water that you get through the NWC main to water your plants. Why is that? Why is that important for our farmers to know? What additive is there in that particular water that might not be good for the plants?
Why, Mr. I'm not hearing you.
No, I'm saying, Branatic, that one of the recommendations that I know that you have all made in the past is that the farmers do not use water from the National Water Commission main, their taps, to water the plants. Why is that important?
Okay, just in brief, so the NWCR, the treated municipal water, Mr. Althea, it often contains the chlorine and other constituents used to make it, used to make it, in some cases, harm soil microbes and affect nutrient availability. In some cases, it also damages sensitive crops over time. You know, the chlorine is all built up. While it may be safe in small amounts, regular use, it can lead to soil imbalance and reduce the plant health.
Okay. In what ways, Branatic, you mentioned incorporating organic matter. In what ways does that increase the water holding capacity of the soil?
Hello?
Branatic?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm not sure why you're not hearing me. Let us try to see if we can do that. Are you hearing me clearly now?
Yes, I am.
Right. I'm asking you, you mentioned organic matter, incorporating in organic matter to increase the water holding capacity. In what ways does this increase the water holding capacity? What is it about the organic matter that causes that to happen?
Okay, excellent question, Mr. Althea. Excellent question. Now, organic matter, it increases the soil water holding capacity by acting like a sponge when added to the soil. So whether through compost, manure, or crop residue, it creates a structure that holds on moisture in the root zone, right? It improves the soil ability to absorb water during irrigation or rainfall. Then it slowly releases it to the plant over time, right? And why it is important is that it helps prevent both waterlogging and drought stress, especially like in a sandy or a degraded soil. In short, the organic matter, it means that the soil can store more capillary water, right? The kind of water that we mentioned that the plant actually use.
Now, you mentioned mulching as well, and using the use of mulching to reduce evaporation. I would imagine that you're talking about both plastic mulch and mulch the way it is done in places like St. Elizabeth, where they're using grass for mulch. So it doesn't matter the type of mulch, right?
Right. So because what the mulch does, that it covers the soil surface, as we mentioned, keeping the moisture in by blocking that direct sunlight and thus reducing the water that is lost through evaporation.
Okay. Now, you have gone through quite a number of solutions. We have heard about scheduling irrigation, the use of mulch, rotation of shallow and deep-rooted crops, implementing drip irrigation, and incorporating organic matter. Now, apart from these solutions that you're putting on the table, are there training sessions that you do have in the trade that allows you to share information with the farmers out there in the field? And are there additional measures that as a company you employ to assist farmers to improve the whole issue of how it is that they treat with soil moisture?
Absolutely, Ms. Althea. Now, beyond sessions like this and our regular farmer training programs, our technical department has taken additional steps to support better soil moisture management in the field, right? Now, guided by our vision and driven by our passion, our pride, and our promise to serve our farmers, we have introduced practical tools to help improve irrigation decision making. One of the key measures we have implemented is the use of soil moisture monitoring devices, right? Now, these tools, Ms. Althea, they provide real-time, on-the-spot reading of the percentage of water in the soil, measured right before the farmer's eyes, right? Now, this data-driven approach, it allows us to advise farmers precisely on whether irrigation is needed, and if so, how much. Now, what makes this truly effective, Mr. Althea, is that we don't stop at just telling farmers when to irrigate. We take it up another notch by monitoring the readings until the desired moisture level is reached. And this is based on the specific growth stage of the crop, as we mentioned before, right? Now, this ensures that the water is used efficiently and thus reducing waste and maximizing crop performance. It is one more way, Mr. Althea, how we are turning knowledge into practical support so that the farmers can make informed decisions, protect their yields, and grow with confidence.
Excellent. All right, Branatic, can you just quickly then go back through, let us do a little bit of reiteration here, going back over the issues and then touching on the solutions?
No, right. As we mentioned, the two main issues regarding the irrigation and soil moisture that farmers are facing is irrigating by the clock, and as we mentioned, it is when the farmers, they have the watering done to a fixed schedule, and they also irrigate only when the crops are showing signs of wilting, right? And to compensate, the solution towards this is scheduled irrigation based on the crop stage and the test levels, as we mentioned, not just by habit, the use of mulch, all right? The rotation of shallow and deep-rooted crops, the implementation of drip irrigation where applicable, and also the incorporation of organic matter. Some extra tips for the farmers is to use the hand feed test, all right? Use mulch, water early morning or in the evening to reduce evaporation, and for sandy soil, water more often in smaller amounts. For clay soil, water less but deeper.
Right, this is very important information. Now, also important, Branatic, is how people can reach out to you and, of course, the rest of the team there at Newport-Fersan.
Okay, so to reach out to me, you can contact me at 552-0520. To reach out to the Newport-Fersan team, you can contact us, and that is 876-967-5815. Right, so again, you can reach out to me at 552-0520, and to reach out to the rest of the Newport-Fersan team is at 967-5815.
All right. Thank you so very much, Branatic. This is critical information that has been provided. We are in the month of July. And of course, the deeper we get into summer, the hotter it is likely to become. So this is very good information coming at this time when farmers, some of them already experiencing drought conditions. And it is good that you have clarified the issues this morning and put on the table the solutions that can assist them. Thank you so very much.
You're most welcome.
All right, take care. Branatic Neufville there. He's agronomist out of Zone 1 with Newport-Fersan, Jamaica.
Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions was brought to you by Newport-Fersan Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.